Hey everybody, Cody Meyer here, Tackle Warehouse Pro, and I want to share with you guys today 3 baits, 3 techniques that I absolutely love really in the pre-spawn time of the year. You know, the pre-spawn time of the year is a great time to be out there on the water. You know, it's one of those times where you're going to catch a lot of big fish and a lot of numbers. And you know, for me being an angler, that is always, you know, a perfect time to be out there. You know, in that pre-spawn, the fish are thinking about really 2 things: eating up and spawning. So, you know, during the winter time, they're really lethargic. You know, the water's cold. Now we're getting into that pre-spawn time of the year. The water is going to start warming up, you know, from that mid 50s, 60 degrees. Those fish are really going to think about spawning, and feeding is very, very important to them. You know, when they're going to start spawning, they're not going to eat as much. So they really want to do all their eating prior to the spawn. You know, a couple things I love to do, no matter where you're at, if you're in South Texas, you're out in California, you're in Florida, is fish structure. You know, for me, one thing I love in the pre-spawn is a lot of grass, if the lake has a lot of grass. Grass holds tons of bait fish, tons of big fish. It's a perfect ambush area for some of these big fish in this pre-spawn. And you know, really over the last couple of years, a vibrating jig has been a way that I catch a lot of these big fish, especially in pre-spawn. You know, one thing with pre-spawn too, when you find these spots, you know, you might be fishing a lake with, you know, a lot of rock or grass, and you're going to be covering a lot of water. You want to start off with some moving baits. You're not going to catch fish everywhere, but when you find that spot, typically they're going to be schooled up, a bunch of males in that area, a bunch of big females, and they're going to be biting like crazy. So this vibrating jig, you know, like I say, is something that I've relied on the last couple of years. Something you can cover a lot of water with, and you know, when you get bites on this, it's a really high percentage hookup bait that you're going to catch a lot of fish with. You know, what I like throwing is a Strike King Thunder Cricket. You know, this bait came out pretty recent, and it's a perfect bait. You know, but any of these vibrating jigs is going to be a must-have for you guys to be throwing. But this Strike King Thunder Cricket, you know, for starters, it's got the right hook on there. This is an owner Zo-Wire hook. This is a 4/0 hook, extremely sharp. It's got this gray, silky gray coating on there, really good penetration. You can see the detail in this bait. The colors are absolutely phenomenal. You know, this is a bluegill color. This is one of my favorite colors. I'm typically going to go with a black and blue, a bluegill, or some type of shad pattern. But another thing that's cool with this Thunder Cricket, you're going to have on the nose of this bait where the blade's going to be in this little clevis here. It's going to move up and down. What that's going to do is, when you're really fishing this bait slow, this blade's always going to have action. You know, the blade's going to actually hit the head and create that unique sound, but it's always going to have action even at the slowest speeds. You know, again, the action is going to be a very erratic action. You know, this blade's going to be vibrating back and forth. But you know, this is a bait, you know, especially on the Major League Fishing tour, that there were so many fish caught. It's a bait that, you know, catches big ones, like I say, but catches numbers as well. You know, as far as the trailer goes, this is a Strike King Blade Minnow. You know, I like to match it up with the vibrating jig, with the Thunder Cricket. You know, the bluegill color is going to have a green pumpkin. You know, this is a bait, again, very subtle, but deadly on a vibrating jig. The rod and reel are going to be really important too. You know, I prefer a Daiwa Tatula Elite. This is a 7.3 medium heavy rod, multi-purpose, designed by Ehrler, but, you know, a 7-foot rod to a 7'6" rod will work with this technique, you know, but you just want that medium heavy kind of parabolic action. You know, nothing too light, but you don't want something too stiff as well. That's why I prefer the medium heavy. As far as line goes, you know, you can definitely get away with a bigger line. You know, this is an 18-pound Daiwa J-Fluoro. It's a fluorocarbon line, very, very strong. And the reel, you know, this is a new Daiwa Tatula Elite reel. I prefer a 6:3 gear ratio. Why? When I'm fishing that bait, you know, I want to slow down the retrieve, and if I'm fishing a little bit deeper, maybe in that 5 to 8 foot range, I can keep that bait in the strike zone. Again, I'm going to catch a lot of fish on this. You know, when I'm fishing in the springtime, the pre-spawn, like I say, I'm looking for areas, typical areas where they're going to spawn. You know, you want to look at, say there's a point with a pocket or a bay behind it. They're going to stage up on some of those points as they move back into the creek. or the bay to spawn. So those are the areas I'm typically gonna look at. Not too deep. You don't need to get out in that real deep water. Shallow is gonna be the key all around the country. Another thing they're gonna really be biting is crawdads. You know, crawdads on natural rock, man-made rock, you know, jetties. That is a really big deal for me in the springtime. And, you know, something like this little Strike King square bill, this 1.5, and any type of craw pattern is gonna be a must-have for me. And again, I go back to covering water until you find the fish. You know, whether you're throwing the Vibrating jig, Strike King Thunder Cricket, a 1.5, you wanna cover water throughout the day, find those fish where they're gonna be, and you're gonna put a lot more fish in the boat. As far as this 1.5 goes, like I say, craw patterns, 90% of the time in pre-spawn, that's what I'm gonna be throwing. And another thing I love to do is change the hooks. You know, these are owner stinger hooks. You know, this is again a 1.5, these are number 4s. You know, it's a must have. A lot of times these fish, they're gonna come up, they're gonna, you know, nip at the bait, swipe at the bait. Good hooks are a must to catch more of these fish. But, you know, this is a time also where they really eat the bait good. And, you know, being a tournament angler, we have to put a lot of these fish in the boat. As far as the setup goes, you know, I prefer a glass rod. You know, glass has been around for a long time, or a composite rod, but I like the glass. You know, this is a 7'2" Daiwa Tatula Elite glass rod. You know, again, this is designed by Ehrler. It's a small to a medium crankbait rod. You know, it's really at that medium to medium heavy action. You know, it's not a medium heavy, but it's that medium, you know, around that medium range. Again, rod length, it's gonna all depend on what you like, but I prefer a 7 foot to maybe a 7'4" rod. As far as a reel, I like something with a little bit more power, a little higher gear ratio than the Vibrating jig. You know, this is a Daiwa Tatula Elite reel, 7:1 gear ratio. You're gonna be winding this square bill, you know, a little bit faster than you would, say, the Strike King Thunder Cricket. So I wanna be able to pick up a lot of line really quick. And again, bigger line, an 18 pound, you know, possibly a 20 pound, but again, a parabolic rod. That's gonna be the key with throwing this square bill on a lot of this rock. You know, it also works good around some wood and stuff as well. Just wherever they're going to be spawning, you think, check right outside of that and you're gonna find a lot of fish. You know, last but not least, you know, this is a bait that I've just caught a ton of fish on over the last couple years. And, you know, pre-spawn, those fish, if there's, say, a cold front, the barometric pressure changes, they can get a little bit finicky, and that's when I go to a wacky rig worm. You know, one of my favorites is a Strike King Ocho, from that 4 to 6 inch size. You know, this happens to be a 5 inch. You know, I'm gonna throw it weightless, but also Neko rig with a little weight in the head. You know, I'm gonna put this weight all the way up in the head. I prefer tungsten. You know, this is a little 3/32. I go with that at the heaviest down to a 16th ounce size. This is, again, EcoPro tungsten, slides right in there. And the setup is pretty simple. You know, I do like to put a little O-ring on here, rubber band. There's a variety of companies now that make this, but it's just gonna save, you know, some baits. The bait's gonna slide up the line. You know, you're gonna save a lot of the baits, catch a few more fish on it. And the hook, you know, this is a hook I actually helped design by owner. This is a Sniper Finesse Neko hook. You know, this is the hook I use 100% of the time throwing this technique. And again, it's got this silky gray finish, a little bit of an offset hook, and just really works good with this. You know, how I'm gonna fish this bait, very, very simple. You know, if I'm throwing with a Neko rig, I'm gonna fish in those same basic areas that we fished earlier in the day with that Vibrating jig, with the square bill, but I'm just gonna back off a little bit. You know, maybe there was some wind in the morning and I'm catching those fish, now it's flat calm. You know, this is gonna be a lot more subtle approach as well. You know, I'm gonna throw it out there, let it hit the bottom, and just slowly shake it along the bottom. And really, this bait's gonna do the rest. Again, this is Strike King Ocho. Natural colors is really key. Something around that green pumpkin color is gonna be really, really good for you. As far as the rod and reel setup, you know, this is a Daiwa Tatula Elite 7'4" versatile rod, a rod I designed. But again, you want a rod, you know, that 6'10" to 7'6", somewhere in that range. A medium action rod. You know, you don't want something too light, you know, that medium light. You don't want really a heavy action rod as well. because you're gonna be throwing a little bit lighter line. So that medium action is really, really key. You know, as far as the reel, this is a Daiwa Exist reel. You know, I love throwing this reel. I love throwing the Daiwa Tatula LT, that light and tough reel. Just again, something with a really good drag is gonna be a must have, because again, you're throwing a lighter line. And as far as the line goes, guys, this is a Daiwa J-Braid. Again, a 10-pound J-Braid. I like the chartreuse color. I'm gonna have, you know, maybe an 8 to a 10-foot fluorocarbon leader on there. This is a Daiwa J-Fluoro. This is gonna be a 10-pound. You know, you can get away with a little bit bigger a line, really that, you know, that 8 to 10-pound test. But still, you know, with light line, a good drag is a must-have. And again, very easy technique to fish. You just want to throw it out, let it hit the bottom, hop it around. And again, springtime, pre-spawn, guys, make sure you're out in the water, because this is the time of the year that they're really biting. So hopefully, guys, these techniques help you catch more fish, land more fish, and have a good time on the water. So make sure to check out all these great products at tacklewarehouse.com.